Welcome to Spiritual Direction and Soul Care Sunday Live every Sunday at 2 p.m. Eastern. And I'm so glad that we're all together again, whether you're watching right now live or on the replay. We are going to have a great second session as we move into further exploring the gifts of imperfection. So glad that you're with us, and I can't wait to hear from you in the comments, especially on Facebook Live. If you are watching us on YouTube, come on over to Facebook and join us at our Facebook page group. There you can find more resources and more information as well. It is awesome. We started Gifts of Imperfection, this series, on November 7th, and we'll continue for a couple more weeks. Still trying to figure out where we'll smoothly transition into Advent or not. It will be 1 year, the 1 year anniversary of Spiritual Direction and Soul Care when we start into Advent. So I'm really still thinking a lot about what that will look like and what an Advent exploration and seasonal series of spiritual growth will look like. So send me your ideas, send me some things that you might want to really like dig into or that you would really need. I mean, last year we talked about the theme was Hush the Noise. And that really, I think, resonated with the moment of the end of the year of our first year of COVID and all those things. So just let me know. I'd love to hear from you, and I'll keep thinking about it. As well as normally, we have something really special happening this week. Normally, every other week, we have midweek meditation, but this week, we are going to host midweek meditation immediately after last week. So this Wednesday, November 17th, the following Wednesday, we'll be getting into the Thanksgiving holiday, and we will not be hosting it. So join us this coming Wednesday at 7 p.m. on Zoom. That's where you join the Facebook group. You can find the links there in the events page and join us at 7 p.m. I don't care what time zone you're in, make it a priority. Come and join us and be with us on midweek meditation. It is a great time, of very intentional, guided around themes, as well as we started to do some what we call integrated practice, where we reflect on the meditation itself and kind of share our thoughts and responses and kind of take stock of how the practice impacted us. Also, you can go over to Soul Care, Spiritual Direction, and soulcare.com. Check out our Soul Care program, donate as well as to the work. It's awesome. So let's begin, as we always do, with our most basic spiritual practices of breathing and coming to stillness, giving ourselves the gift of stillness. This is what we've done almost from the beginning of the creation of Spiritual Direction and Soul Care. Just a simple moment where we check in with ourselves and open to the Spirit, where we come to stillness and listen to the voice of God in stillness. And so we do this together. So let's breathe and out. Bring yourself to a place of comfort, whether you're sitting or standing. Make sure you're comfortable. Your spine is tall and straight. Maybe imagine a string from the base of your spine up through your body, coming out of the top of your head, gently elongating your spine. And breathe in for 2, out for 3. It's helpful to close your eyes or maybe focus your attention downward at a spot in front of you. Breathe in and out. I invite you to bring kind awareness to your body, your gut, your chest, your head, whatever. What are the sensations you feel, and where are they? And what are the emotions that you associate with those feelings? Continue to breathe and bring kind awareness to yourself, how your body and interior world are working together and communicating with each other. Breathe and out. There is that of God within you. There's that of the divine around you and between you and all things. Stillness helps us attune to God, to the Spirit that sustains us and is our life. We come to breath and stillness together and continue to breathe. Embracing the silence, giving yourself the gift of stillness. Maybe you're struggling with stillness and silence. Maybe you feel distracted, on edge. That's okay. You're not doing anything wrong. Simply acknowledge where you are. And wherever you are, I invite you to intentionally smile, to bring a smile to your face. In the face of stillness or racing thoughts or something in between, smile. Continue to breathe as you smile. Accept yourself here, however you are, whatever happens around you. Amen. Amen. How do you feel? It's a gift to yourself. It's a gift to yourself. It's not selfish. It's not self-absorbed. It's not something wrong to pay attention to yourself, to rest for a moment. Here in Michigan, it snowed today. There is like 2 inches of just covering on everything. The trees are cloaked. It's beautiful. So I thought I'd set up the camera a little different. You can see our little baby Christmas tree. Eventually, we'll get a live Christmas tree in the living room. But we have this little baby, skinny, flocked Christmas tree up that's lit. We're moving toward that season. I know, it's not quite Thanksgiving yet. But the season is moving toward a small hints of that time. Maybe tell me what you think about the holiday season. How do you feel about the holiday season? Does it bring anxiety for you? Does it make you excited? Do you feel like it's a time of forced joy? Like, what is it for you? Let me know, whether you're watching on the broadcast or the replay. Give me some thoughts. Let me know how you feel about the coming holidays and what your hopes are for this holiday season. I would love to hear from you. So let's move into session 2 of Gifts of Imperfection. Gifts of Imperfection. Session 2, we are looking at wholehearted living. And like I had shared last week, I got really inspired a few weeks before this from a workshop around these ideas and concepts and themes. And it really impacted me in a way that I knew I needed to pass this along to the spiritual direction and soul care community. Right? How these gifts of imperfection that we're looking at are rooted in ideas from the book with the same title from Brene Brown. And we're exploring what it means to live wholeheartedly, how we can live fully, how we can live openly. I like the idea of open-hearted living, right? We can do this even in the challenges of life, even in the challenges we create for ourselves or that others bring to us. I think the holidays many times at their best, holiday is just a shortened phrase for holy day. I think at their best, they help us slow down and find gifts even within the realities of what we're living. I'm getting some comments here. Jill says that she's looking forward to the holidays for sure. Yes, I am too. Betsy King McDonald says something that brings you true joy and peace is never too far in the future to reach into and try to inhabit now. Yeah, that's a great way to think about the holidays. Yes. And she says, though, little warning, right? As long as it doesn't keep you from being present to the gifts of the meantime. Yeah. Little things, little hints, right? That draw us into these soul shaping, soul healing, open-hearted spaces of intentional reflection and celebration and feasting and connection, right? But we aren't living for Christmas, right? Like I always know I'm not doing well, or if a loved one isn't doing well, if you're just living for vacation, and especially if you just got back from one, right? You know what I mean? Like there's these gifts in holiday, there's these gifts in Sabbath, there's these gifts in vacation, there's these gifts in these seasons, but we can't ever just hold off for those and get gut it out, and forget that there are gifts right now. And that's what this whole series is about, right? How do we find gifts within perfect imperfections now, right? And this is more than just finding silver linings, right? You can use, I know each one of us can use the energy of your hurt, your challenges, the boredom, the routine, right? We can do this to find real meaning and purpose and deeper connections with those we love. That's open hearted living. That's wholehearted living right now, being present to the gifts of the meantime. That's not silver linings. That's, well, I'm trying really hard to see that cup half full. No, it's actually finding gifts from within the very thing that seems to be so challenging. It's the raw materials. It's this imagination for transformation, right? Living wholehearted means being able to notice and identify what's really happening within yourself. And maybe even really happening within the person across from you, and really seeing others for who they are and delighting in that, supporting that, not judging that, but journeying with it together. Brene Brown says that if we want to live and love with our whole hearts, if we want to engage with the world from a place of worthiness, we have to talk about the things that get in the way, especially shame and fear and vulnerability. And so each week we're going to be talking about, and have been talking about, like last week we talked about compassion and courage. We're going to talk about shame. We're going to talk about worth and belonging. We're going to talk about authenticity and vulnerability. Today we're going to really look at shame. Okay. And again, if you're watching this broadcast or replay, I'd really encourage you to get out a pen or a journal, or maybe open up a note or document on your device, whatever works best for you, to help you really pay attention, to jot down ideas, to write down that flash of insight and wisdom that's within you, because each one of us have this light within, the Spirit of God within, that thing that is of God within us, that is communicating with us, where deep calls to deep. And I want you to not miss out on your own gifts of wisdom, but also I want you to not miss out on the opportunity to share those in the chat as well. Whether it's concepts that stick out for you, questions that stick out for you, I don't care. Whatever it is, let's track with this and let's journey in an intentional way right now. And so let's dive into the material and share our thoughts. I'm really looking forward to hearing from you and the wisdom that fills our community. So let's talk about shame. Shame. What is it? How do we define shame? Well, Brene Brown says that shame is the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. See? Do you see the leap that shame makes? The painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love and belonging. Do you see? Like most of us at our best can be realistic about the fact that nobody's perfect. We all have our flaws. It's just what it means to be human. And we shouldn't make a big deal out of it. We should just recognize it and accept our glitches and and own them, like, and say, not own them in like a moralistic way, but be like, hey, this kind of scenario is hard for me. And so I get a little freaked out, or I overmanage, or I overfunction, or I shut down, right? That's my glitch. That's how I work. That's how you work. What are your glitches? What are your flaws, right? I don't think any of us reasonably have a hard time admitting that we are flawed. The problem is with shame is where we make the jump to the and therefore are unworthy of love and belonging. Right? So many times religion reinforces shame. Right? Maybe tell me ways that you've seen shame religiously enforced. Maybe there's a lot of people in spiritual direction soul care who are on a spiritual journey, who have complicated relationships with their church families or their church religion of origin, or the one that they grew up in with their own real life families, right? How have you seen shame express itself? How have you seen shame express itself in your spiritual and religious beliefs, right? I think a lot of times when we overemphasize the flawed nature of human beings and we make it disproportionately the main thing that we talk about ourselves, no matter how much we talk about how there's grace or salvation or healing or however you want to talk about it, I don't care what religion you're in. If you talk too much about and overemphasize the issue of flawed sin nature, all those things, it still ends up communicating a sense that you are unworthy of love and belonging, where we teach sometimes where grace is not the overflow of God saying, you are mine and I delight in you. And I don't want you to believe the lie that you are unworthy of my love and that you don't deserve to belong with me. But where we basically, no matter how positive of a spin we put on it, we make grace sound like God holding his nose and just giving you something you don't deserve, but he does it because he loves you. The whole thing. Like, I mean, you even have versions of Christianity, especially where people very delight and say, God hates you. God hates you. God doesn't see you, like crazy talk, right? So, like, it's this religion a lot of times helps reinforce the and therefore you are unworthy of love and belonging. Same. Shame sometimes looks like the fear of disconnection, um, the fear of being unlovable. See, we have some comments here. Betsy says some traditions need you to feel like crap to try to make God matter. Right, right. What a little tiny God, right? That needs everybody to feel so bad so God can matter, right? It's just a more sophisticated way of making God uh ticket out of hell or a coping mechanism for our anxiety, right? Alexis, so glad you're with us today, Alexis. Alexis says, I've experienced shame in depression and anxiety while church friends encourage toxic positivity and view me as less holy. Right. And you want to say to people, pick up the Psalms, man. There's literally a book in the Bible called Lamentations, right? Job, Ecclesiastes, right? Right? Like, hello, right? There's no footnotes or disclaimers on those pieces of sacred text. Jeremiah calls God a liar, right? I think is it Habakkuk? Habakkuk, or is it Obadiah? Obadiah is just a bunch of like questions. God, when are you going to show up and fix this? Because this sucks. God, when are you going to fix this? God, where are you? When are you going to come and get rid of these damn Babylonians? Right? Like, they're nah, we don't need that, right? That has less to do with a vibrant faith than about avoiding the realities of life. And see, this is where also, just really honestly, this is where our Buddhist companions help us, right? Because so much of Christianity has gotten co-opted into this full sunshine thing. And even though we have the resources within the Christian tradition to look at the reality and have a realistic accounting of difficulty, disappointment, and pain, there's this mixture in American society in the West with just achievement and productivity and positivity and all these things, right? And so our Buddhist companions help us kind of come back down to earth and go, no, life hurts, right? Like the primary teaching of Buddhism is that life is filled with suffering. And while Christianity and Buddhism have an opportunity for a very interesting dialogue about where that comes from, where that suffering comes from, and how to address it, it'd be better for us as Christians, if you're a Christian and watching, to have a posture of curiosity and dialogue. And where is there common ground? And how can we encourage each other to go deeper into our own traditions and discover the wisdom, right? That is there in Ecclesiastes and Job and Lamentations and literally all the prophets. And, and just like look at the narratives of the Hebrew scriptures. You can't get through just Genesis and be like, yay, human beings are doing great. Patriarchy works, right? Like you can't walk away from even the book of Genesis going, man, everything's just chipper, right? You know what I mean? So our own tradition has this, but it seems like we're avoiding these things, right? It has these things. Betsy liked that one. Getting some laughs in the emojis here. Let's keep talking about this, right? I mean, Alexis, I'd love to hear more from you too about like why do you think that is, or what's your experience with people who push the holiness, the so-called holiness of toxic positivity? Brene Brown says shame grows in secrecy and silence and judgment. Right? And if in our shared life spaces, whether they're church or work or wherever, we can't be open about our frustration, our hurt, our pain, the fact that the last 18 months has sucked, you know what I mean? And you're not bad because you say so, because that's reality. Pandemic has sucked. And a whole bunch of us have had a whole bunch layered on top of that as well. It's hard. And if we can't say that, if we don't have permission to say that, then that creates shame and reinforces shame, right? Shame is, as it's very popular to say this, but shame is about who we think we are, right? Guilt is how we feel bad about things we've done. But shame is us believing, maybe by the accumulated effect of our misunderstanding of the things we've done, and said, this therefore is an accumulation of evidence that tells me I'm terrible, that tells me I'm bad, that tells me I'm worthless, that tells me I'm less than, that tells me I never can be loved, that tells me no one will ever really see who I am and love me, right? All these things. Or shame that says, I can't let anybody see me or even minimally let down my guard. I need to always project an image of success, or else there's always going to be somebody who's going to go toward me, right? I mean, that's really big, especially in middle class social respectability that dominates this country, right? The idea that we must project an image of success in order to be successful, right? What's the movie? American Beauty, where Annette Bening's totally psychotic character, right? In order to be successful, I must project an image of success. She was so obsessed with the image that she had lost herself, and she loses everything ultimately, right? Because everyone's held at arm's length and nobody really sees her, and she doesn't feel like anyone, she doesn't even know who she is anymore, right? We're getting some comments in here about shame, y'all. Shame is awesome to talk about because it's such a fruitful conversation. You guys, like, you are already weighing in. Judy, you're in here. It's so good that you're with us too. Judy says the systems in general impose shame upon those persons that the systems themselves have failed. Whoa. Okay, the systems in general, the way we work, right? Impose shame upon the people that the systems have failed. So like you're wondering why you're not happy. You're wondering why you feel terrible, but you keep going to church and they keep telling you that you just got to keep hammering away and doing the Christian thing or doing whatever, right? Or keep working out or keep eating right or whatever it is, whatever your poison is, but it's not working. And so instead of saying, does this actually work for me? Is this actually true? Is what you're peddling to me real and effectual and can really transform me? What does it do, right? It actually fails you, so they just keep making you feel like shame, right? right? You're getting some reactions here, Judy, to this. She says the value of innocent persons that have been victimized in society or failed by family or material systems is not something of which those comfortable wish to be reminded. People want to believe, oh, the innocent sufferer must have done something wrong or stupid to be suffering. They are the problem. They are the problem. And even if the sufferer realizes this false imposition of shame upon them is occurring and that it's a lie, it is very difficult not, at the very least temporarily, to feel shamed as if we are indeed shameful. That's it. Right? Right? Here we are, deep end of the pool. Thank God for Judy Gabinski, right? Like, this is the whole thing. This is the whole thing. This is the whole thing. It's like when it's that thing when people feel acute, like when someone says you are bad or you did wrong, even though you didn't do it, even when you know you didn't do anything wrong, you still feel as if you did something wrong because somebody said so, because they're projecting shame toward you. That's how we're wired. And then people see your shameful reaction. They go, see, they're guilty. See, they must have done something. They might not know what it is yet, but deep down, right? That's Job. That's Job and his friends all the way. Well, you wouldn't be in this situation if you hadn't done something wrong in the first place, even if it was secret. Maybe it was in your heart. Maybe it was in your mind. Maybe you have the power to send out from your personal energy the ability to transform the whole course of the universe to make life come by and take a massive crap on you. Like, that's, do you see what I'm saying? It's like weird. It's weird and it's shameful thinking. Alexa says, biggest factor in shaming someone, I think, is that if you haven't been where the person is, it's so much easier to judge. If you've had depression, then you get it. Yes. Empathy and curiosity about where another person is. Yes, absolutely. Judy also says to Betsy, actually, the traditions need to make you feel like crap to make themselves matter, to make the tradition matter, and make you believe that it is them alone who can pass out God to you. Yep. Yes. And Friar Nicholas says spiritual bypassing can be shaming. Yes. And so much of religion is a big, long exercise in spiritual bypassing. That's what toxic positivity is in so many ways, right? Shame is, rooted in the question of, am I worthy to feel connection and be connected with others? Shame sometimes is, Brene Brown says, is filled with, the questions of, will people still love me if they really get to know me? Right. And Brene says too that physical symptoms of shame can be a dry mouth, feeling like time is slowing down, literally getting literal tunnel vision, or a hot face, or a racing heart, or playing the painful slow motion reel over and over and over again in your head. Right? These are shame activities. These are shame symptoms that we manifest in our bodies. That's how powerful it is. How else would you describe or define shame? I'd love to hear from you. You guys are bringing some great wisdom here. How else would you describe or define shame? How have you experienced it physically or interiorly for yourself? We'll talk about that a little bit too here. And as you throw these comments in, I'll also talk about a little bit more about, like, what does shame look like when it shows up in our interactions with others, right? How does it show up in you? How does shame manifest with others? So let's talk a little bit more about that. One of the ways that you can see shame showing up in with others is when you have a hard time being able to receive critique from peers and coworkers and loved ones, right? Or you're unable to see your blind spots. Like, and by unable, I think like a refusal, right? Where there's that kind of irrational sort of reaction to, like, I can't have any criticism, right? I don't want to look at and explore any blind spots, right? Betsy says, I think it's tricky to excavate the messages that make you feel shame. I don't remember any specific my parents said to me as a kid, but I know very viscerally when I fear that I will fail and disappoint them. Right. Right. And so, like, this is why it's really important in our most close relationships, and I think even with coworkers and people in general, it's better to not leave things unsaid. It's better to say things like, "Hey, I see you. I accept you. I'm so glad you're my kid. I'm so glad you're my spouse. I'm so glad you're my mom. I'm so glad," you know what I mean? Like, "Hey, you're doing a good job. I'm really proud of you. You know what? I see that you're struggling with school right now and you don't feel, or you're struggling with your job and you don't feel like you're doing your part, or you are feeling a little lost. I believe in you. You'll figure it out," right? Like saying these things, because when we leave the assumption that we're okay with each other out there, we start believing that we're not okay with each other. And then that reinforces our shame, right? So you don't even have to say anything particularly damaging. It's just by not saying anything at all, right? And I don't always get this. I don't always get this. I've been trying lately when I get ready to leave for work before my oldest typically goes out to the bus before me, then I walk out the door and go to work, and then the other two go to school. And so like most days I try to be really intentional about saying to each one, "Hey, I love you. I'm proud of you. I'm really glad you're my kid." And I'll say to Jill, "I love you. I'm proud of you. I'm really glad you're my wife." You know? Like these are these touchstones that I want to start building in a more conscious way, you know, with each other. There's some really good conversation happening in the chat, and we'll get into that in a minute. I want to get through some of these other things as well. Other ways that we see shame showing up with others is when we have a feeling of disconnection from our groups, our families, the team at work, whatever. These feelings of disconnection, that's not necessarily because anybody's doing anything to you. It's because maybe shame is having you feel like you can't be as connected. Right? Whenever a person shuts down, right, completely shuts down, that's total shame. When you're dismissive of other people's viewpoints, that's driven by shame. That's not you trying to be an ass. That means that you're feeling shame because a different point of view communicates to you that you might be wrong or not got it all right, and therefore see I'm a bad person. And so, right? So you have to like shut down other viewpoints so that way you can protect your conception of self. See how this connects in religion as well, right? When we hide or refuse to participate in difficult conversations, when we paper over differences when they arrive, right? And I'm not saying like sometimes things aren't worth it and you got to pick your battles. I'm not saying that that wisdom doesn't apply. I'm just saying like if you kind of have this reflexive need to avoid conflict, right? Or to engage difference, right? I know I'm in a season of life right now where there's certain kinds of difference around faith and spirituality. There's certain kinds of ways of being in certain kinds of communities and the way they posture themselves in such damaging ways and such shameful ways. Like I can't be around it, right? I just can't be around it because it triggers my shame, but it also is I got to get healed because I've been so hurt by it, right? Do any of you feel this? You know? Some of us do this with family members where we have to go to no contact with certain kinds of people. That's okay. There are seasons where you need that, right? But we also have to be aware, and the gift there, right? The gift there is we recognize that that's because it's triggering deep shame, and now we know what we need to kind of work on and get healed, and really ask, does this really tell me I'm a bad person? Does this tell me I'm really failing because I've changed my view on X? Does this da da da? You know, you get what I'm saying? Are you picking up what I'm putting down? Um, Another way we can see this is expressing conscious or unconscious defense mechanisms, you know, disproportionate emotional responses to things, overreacting, reactivity, overcrying, or a lack of emotion. Right? When you project or transfer, all these kind of classic psychological things where you're not feeling good, you had a bad day, you're not feeling good, but you haven't had enough time to reflect to notice that you even had a bad day and it was hard on you. So suddenly you're like all really super rant at everybody when they get home or when you get home, right? Well, that's not about because anybody's actually done anything. That's because you're at a place where you're kind of like trying to defend something and you don't even know what it is. And that's okay. Now that we recognize it, then you can see what's happening here and you know yourself more. And you can start changing the shame narrative and saying, oh, there's something at stake here for me. And I don't have to get it exactly right, but like there's something at stake here for me that I feel like I'm not good enough and I'm not okay. And actually, I am. And just because I had a bad day at work doesn't mean I'm not okay. You know, just because I had a difficult conversation with my teenager doesn't mean I'm not okay, or I'm failing as a parent, and therefore, again, I'm not okay. Right? Do you see these things? Right? These are the gifts. This is the gift. There's a gift to be found in shame, where we get to like actually step and go, is this actually what's happening? Is this what's going on inside me? Is that true? No, it's not. Right? You get to use the power of your narrative power, the storytelling power you have within yourself to give yourself a different way to see yourself. What are other ways we can see shame showing up in other people? When people hide their feelings, hide their emotions, when people don't share their needs and requests, right? Sometimes when you're feeling bad about yourself or whatever, or you get stressed out, somebody says, well, what do you need? And you go, I don't know what I need. The reason why you don't know is because shame is acting as a dam that is damming up your soul because you aren't worthy of your own attention. So you don't know, right? And so the thing that's getting in the way on some level is shame. See, shame doesn't always have to be this debilitating, oh, I'm so bad. It's this weird thing in the water of our cognition, of how we're thinking. It's this weird, like, how do I say this? Like we had to get our freezer fixed, the freezer side of our refrigerator, because there was a thing starting to die, a component starting to die. And so the fan was starting to go, at weird times, and we try to go to bed, the house would finally be quiet, and you'd hear all the way on the other side from the other side of the house, and the freezer was freezing, the refrigerator was working fine, we didn't know what it was. And we finally, Joe was like, can we get that fixed? So we finally did the work to find somebody to come and fix it. And now we have a quiet freezer, right? But that's kind of like how shame works, right? Like you're still functional. It doesn't mean the whole thing craps out. It means you're still functional. Your freezer's still working. Your ice cream isn't soup, but there's this annoying going through a lot of our stuff. And you're just like, what? I have to account for that. You know what I mean? Does that make sense? Is anybody getting this? Does that work for you? So like when we don't know what we need, it's not because we're necessarily devastatingly crapping on ourselves. It's just there's this thing that's blocking us that that doesn't even feel blocked. It's just we just don't know, right? So we have to push in. We have to ask questions. We might need to talk to a therapist. We might need to go for a walk and say, why, what's really going on with me? I think that's one of the most powerful questions, diagnostic questions that we can ask ourselves and in any situation is what's actually happening right now, right? Within us, between us, in you and me, what's actually happening, right? It's a powerful question. It's a duh question, but it's actually a really powerful question. Another way we see it show up in others is when we see others who are disconnected, when we see others who are isolated or isolating themselves, people who are saying and clearly very lonely or withdrawn, especially in hard moments, right? Like when you have a tragedy unfold, right? Well, you can see health when people move toward each other in tragedy and support each other, weep together, laugh together. I see this sometimes in hospital rooms. I had 2 patients die within a week of each other, and they were both in the same hospital room. And one family the week before all hated each other's guts and was like yelling at each other and saying terrible things to each other, standing over this person as they're dying, saying terrible things to each other because in disruption, they were so driven. There was so much shame through the whole family system and in each one of them, between the in-laws and everybody, that at disruption, they just atomized, they just shattered, right? A week later, a whole different family in the same room, different patient, older gentleman, right? And they are standing around and telling stories and thanking him and saying, I love you. And there's like forgiveness happening between people and they're pulling together, right? This is a disruption that is not being driven then further by shame, right? This is a non-shame informed, difficult situation, right? right? Do you see what I'm saying? And another place where you see shame is in mistrust. When you see someone else as mistrustful, paranoid and mistrustful, that's actually that there's a component of that is because of their own shame. Right? I'm not good enough. I'm terrible. That must mean everything around me is terrible or about to become terrible always. And so therefore, there's only so much I can give. Do you see how that's a closed down way of living? This is not open-hearted living. Do you see what I'm saying here? These are all things. So let's get into some of the comments here because some of y'all have got some really good things happening here. Judy says that shame is the result of believing our own incarnation into form was a moral failing or sinful fall, rather than a courageous willingness to experience the perception of limitation for the sake of love being limitless. And I would say, even for the sake of truly being loved, right? Shame is the result of believing that at rock bottom, what we are is failure, is bad, right? Yes, this is beautiful. And Betsy says, as we were talking about, it's risky, it's hard to like excavate where we get our shame messages. And I think we had talked a little bit about how like was you don't necessarily have to have negative messaging, but a lack of positive messaging, right? She says, I think that's exactly it. Very little was ever said. So we're starving for love makes you very conscious of risking the loss of love or approval that you are getting. There it is again, you guys. See, this is, you see, like people, y'all need to keep inviting friends to join us and get people here on these calls because this is where the wisdom drops, y'all, in the comments, okay? So many of us are starving for love that it makes us conscious of risking the loss of the love and approval that we are getting. What little bit we are getting, we're so conscious of the risk of loss of that, right? We're so starving for love, right? And see, so much of this boils down to love. It's so, I know it can seem tired and played out, but it really does boil down to love, right? Judy says the Catholic Church as an institution even shames sexual abuse victims of priests. The victims, they shame them for not attending Mass anymore. They're told they left the faith and they're now separated from God in the Eucharist, even when the victims' no contact separation from the abusive entity is the most important thing to their psychological survival. Also, innocent victims are the Christ figure, the most holy sacrificed victim in this dynamic. Yes, you guys, so good. Yes, right? This is so good. This is so good. Good words. Tell me what else. How else do you see shame showing up for you? How else do you see shame manifesting in those around you or in the people that you love? And, like, where do we, I think too, like having an account of shame for the people that we a lot of times spend the best hours of our day with. Maybe you're back at work working in a space with people, right? That difficult coworker. How much of their difficulty is not because they're trying to be a bad person, but right? But because they're completely hindered and uh, bound by shame, right? And then we cover that shame with anger and reactivity to others, right? What does that look like? What do these things look like for you? With the people, especially the difficult people, the ones that are hardest to be around. What would happen if we started seeing difficult people through the eyes of compassion for their shame, not trying to fix them, not trying to get into their life and say, let me talk to you about your shame because they clearly don't like you or they don't want to be in it with you, right? But how would it transform your conception of them, yourself, and the dynamics? And how would you start interacting and contributing differently in those spaces if you could see the difficult person as a person racked by shame, hiding, desperate and starved for love, wounded, right? Right? This brings us back to last week when we talk about then compassion and courage, right? Do you see? These are the gifts that can be found in our shame and in the shame of others. The transformation of our imagination, right? And getting an imagination for transformation as we live amongst others who are struggling with shame and longing to be loved, just like you and me, just like all of us, right? We're all so desperate to be loved. It utterly changes our understanding of the Holy Scriptures now for me. I visit, we could meditate all week on beloved, let us love one another, for love is from God, and everyone that loves is born of God and knows God. Everyone who loves is born of God and knows God. The one that does not love does not know God, for God is love. So, beloved, let us love one another. See, informed by the desperation for love that is shame, right? Informed by shame. How do you understand that word about what is ultimate and what is true and the ultimate heart of reality? How do you understand God? And how do you understand the life of God that is longing and waiting to break forth in the life of the person across from you who seems so shut down and so mean and so distant, right? How does the gifts to be found with this awareness transform that situation for you and how you want to contribute to it? See, right? Betsy says, that was my church strategy. It must be hard to live in the same head with those shaming voices, right? Like, it's got to be hard for some of these people to be these people. Like we've always said, it's hard to be a person. It's hard to be a person. But y'all know, every one of us have people in our lives where we go, gosh, it's got to be hard to be them. You know what I mean? It's got to be hard to be them, you know? Part of setting boundaries for ourselves and not letting their energy reinforce their shame, the energy of their shame reinforce our shame, right? Like if you wouldn't let someone walk into your house uninvited, don't let them walk into your thoughts either, right? If you wouldn't let if you wouldn't let voluntarily let a crappy situation unfold in your house, then don't let one voluntarily unfold in your head either, right? Don't let other people's shame and the difficulty of being themselves give you an assignment that somehow is the word of God to you that you have to take on. Don't do that to yourself, right? It's actually hindering you from yourself, but it's also hindering you from being able to engage with the person in the way that they need, even if they don't ever see you as their healer, right? It's Howard Thurman saying the secret, right, of love is really to meet people where they are, as they are, and treat them there as if they already are where they should be. To meet people where they are, accept them where they are, as they are, and treat them there in that place as if they're already where they should be. See? Friar Nicholas says, I was recently shamed on a Facebook thread I started about spiritual abuse. A fellow priest upbraided me about creating such an undignified public conversation. Well, you know what, man? It's the whole classic. If it's human, it's mentionable. And if it's mentionable, it's manageable. And some of us are just trying our best to just manage. You know, I know we just talked about thriving, but like for some of us, thriving is managing, right? Baby steps, baby, right? There is no undignified conversation. There's only conversations that are safe or unsafe, right? There's only conversations that are being facilitated and led by people who are keeping it safe for the people in it because we all need that healing. And that shame that says this is undignified. Why is it undignified? Because it touches something that you have a hard time with. It touches something about yourself that you don't want to have a conversation about yet because you're afraid of it. You're afraid of saying something wrong. Maybe it's not exactly your issue, but maybe you're afraid you'll say something wrong and you feel like you have to be the priest who's an expert and be the answer person all the time. And you don't feel confident there. And if you got into it and you said something wrong, then people would see that you don't have all the answers and then people won't respect you or love you or need you, right? There's so many things going on, right? And I'm not saying that to be like, rah, rah, rah. I'm saying that to be like, that's discovery. That's discovery of self that he's missing out on. Like even the purported actual conscious value of that conversation you're leading is its own thing, but the reactions to it help break open something for us that have value. And they break open something that has value for you, Friar Nicholas, on how to be with this colleague. See? It's like what Brene Brown says, only when we are brave enough to explore the darkness will we discover the infinite power of our light. And so the key to open-hearted living, the key to wholehearted living, the key to discovering the gifts of imperfection is really owning our stories, owning who we are, where we are in the moment as we live together. So may the lies of shame give way to the reality of your worth. May you retell your stories and see yourself and others in healing light. And may you know that this day and every moment, you are treasured and you are held and you are known. Amen. Amen. Oh, spiritual direction and soul care. You guys are awesome. What a great conversation today. What a great time together as we've spoken about shame and have discovered, I hope for you, the way that shame can be a gateway into gifts that transform your understanding of yourself, your life, and the people around you. As we keep journeying through the gifts of imperfection. I can't wait to see you next week as we talk again some more. We are going to have a great, is it next week? What's the date next week? Let's see. Next week, I'm going to look at my calendar here. We have one more week before the Thanksgiving holiday, so we'll get on it and come and join us this week, back to back midweek meditation this Wednesday 7 p.m. on Zoom. Like I said, I don't care what time zone you live in, make it a priority and come and join us as we do some guided work together, go a little deeper, stretch those spiritual muscles as we become more aware of the presence of God within us and around us for each other. Love you guys so much. Let's have a great rest of the week and let me know how you are doing. Maybe if you need any prayer support, anything like that, throw that info into the chat as we play some music on our way out. Love you guys. Have a great week.
Looking back at the good times before it all went down, climbed right up on the hillside, a different view of my life. You left me running on and on. this place.